We have people coming by the name of Steve Butler all the way from Winter Park, Florida. We have John Butler coming from Palo Verdes Estates in California. Joe Kuldau from Sandusky, Ohio. Dr. John Egan has grabbed a plane, and he's got all the way in here from Denver, Colorado. Earl Lowe, by the way, from Leewell. He is not going to be present tonight. He's a bank president over in Norwalk, Ohio, and he had a bank meeting, and at the last minute he phoned and Mr. L.H. Carpenter and said that he would not be here. Now, Dr. William Wilson out of Hartford, Connecticut, he is present, and also Lawrence Marks out of Kalamazoo. He's going to be here tonight, and we want to say that Howard Bridges out of St. Louis, Missouri, and Harold Red Anderson and Lawrence Gaunt from Wabash. Well, Philip, we should say Mr. Philip Wagner Sr., we know that you know these people, that you've had dealings with all of these people in school. You were a school teacher out here, I think. Yeah, and first of all, why don't we take a look at Mr. L.H. Carpenter, the very fine principal, superintendent, and back in 1920, he was a coach. How about that? Mr. Philip Wagner Sr., a little bit about L.H. Carpenter.
When I first heard of Leewell, he was in the 38th Division down in Mississippi, Gettysburg, Mississippi. But he'd had arthritis and was sent home with a bad knees rather. And the doctor had told him that he never would walk again. He'd be the cripple the rest of his life. But he and his mother and his dad decided that wasn't to be the way it was going to happen. And they fought that thing all down the line. Dr. Willard, the osteopath here in town, felt that he could help. And between the doctor and his parents and Leewell's ambition to get on his feet again, he made a success of it. And as soon as he was able to get around, he was made a teacher in the Wabash High School and was coach of the football team. It was the beginning of football, a famous team, the team of 1920. Most of those fellows in the team were in my classes that I taught in high school. I came here in 1919, right out of the Army, and I think all these boys, except maybe Red Anderson, were in my classes that I had in high school at that time. I haven't seen, well, some of these fellows who live in Wabash I have seen, but some of the other men who have been were on this team, I haven't seen, I expect, for nearly 50 years. So I don't know whether I recognize them or not, or whether they recognize me with my gray hair. Those are great days in Wabash High School. The barns, possibly, are just south of the city barns.
Right in that area.
Yeah, right in that area. And all the teachers were supposed to go down and help with the football game. I usually was on the ticket office with Eldon Barnhart or Theron Tewksbury and Rex Sims. We held down the job there, and the women folks, I think, took the tickets. Each one of us had something to do with that football game. I see here Stu Butler was the captain in 1920 and the center of the team, and John Butler, his older brother, was guard. Joe Kuldau was end. John Egan, tackle. Earl Lowe was guard. Harold Anderson, end. Billy Wilson, quarterback. Larry Marks, halfback. Howard Bridges, tackle. And Lawrence Gaunt, end. Those are the men who are expected here tonight for this roundup. Some of the men who were on that team who have since died was Eddie McNamee, who played tackle. Charles Murphy played end. Tom Showalter played guard. Randall Frazier, halfback. Willard Liechty, fullback. Howard Blair, guard and tackle. James Schultz, center. And Milton Herrell, guard. I remember all these boys well. I think all but one or two of them were in my classes in high school, either in physics or chemistry. I remember them very well. As I say, some of them I probably wouldn't recognize. Been gone for nearly 50 years from Wabash, and probably have changed in their appearance. I'll try to make up for that tonight when I get to see them.
And we're right back over here, and we're also talking with Mr. Wagner. Mr. Wagner, this group of boys had quite a memorable feast at they had some good track boys. Did you know that? I mean, these kids turned out to be good tracks. And I thought possibly we might mention some of their track records. And possibly you can remember some of these state track meets. I didn't realize that Wabash got their teams down at the state track meet, and this particularly back here in 1920 and 1919 and 1922 and 1921, they had quite a spectacular track team.
Of course, most athletics were just getting a good start in Indiana at that time. And Wabash, with Leewell's help, influence, hard work, really put Wabash on the map. Right here, the state track meet at Richmond in 1919, Wabash took first place. Purdue in 1920 took second place. And Richmond in 1922 took second place. And Franklin in 1921 took third place. Some of the teams which they beat was Carpenterville, Noblesville, and Wabash in 1919. Manual of Indianapolis and Wabash in 1920. Technical High from Indianapolis and Wabash in 1922. Manual and Technical Wabash competed in 1921. Here's an account that was in the plane dealer. There's an accident to Lawrence Marks of Wabash in a 220-yard low hurdle at Franklin Saturday afternoon proved fatal to the aspirations of the local high school for a victory in the state high school track and field meet. It forced the orange and black athletes into third place. Marks, who was leading his nearest opponent in the finals, the low hurdles by 10 yards, when about 75 yards to the finish, caught his toe under one of the hurdles, throwing headlong on the track, dazing him temporarily. The final score stood Manual 19, Technical 18, those are both Indianapolis schools, and Wabash 13. If Marks had not had his accident in the low hurdles, the score would have been Wabash 18, Manual 17, and Technical 15.
The team that scored 261 points. They did not allow their opponents to score at all, and they're honoring this team a 50-year celebration. We understand that several of these boys went on and made their first team. By the way, Wabash was declared back in 1920 the mythical state champion, and this team was declared the state champion, and now we understand some of them made the first team, the third team, and the honorable mention on the all-state team that year. And why don't you mention a little bit about each one of these boys that did make this position?
Hence Clark's selection, the story appeared in the Plain Dealer, all-state selections on December 11, 1920. On the first team, he put Lawrence Mark and Steward Butler and Randall Frazier. On his third team, he put McNamee and Showalter, Tom Showalter. As honorable mention among that group, we put Red Anderson, John Butler, Billy Wilson, and Willard Liechty. That was the choice for all state according to Clark in those days.
You've got quite an array of football players here, and it looks like you've got them all in. We can get everybody in here, and why don't we just kind of turn this over to you? And
Why pick on me here? I just one of the boys here.
Well, you know them all, and you can introduce them all, and maybe make some comments. Pete and I will help you out here. So, Lawrence Gaunt, we're turning it over to you.
First here we have Red Anderson, who played one of the ends. And you want to say anything, Red, here?
Well, I'm enjoying this game a great deal.
Well, good.
It's a good game and all, and like Wabash is really going to do it tonight.
Well, Red Anderson, you still live in Wabash, and understand on the south side.
That's right. I've lived in Wabash for a good many years.
Quite a football team, you and Mr. Gaunt. Well, Lawrence Gaunt, let's get the next man up here.
The next man we have coming up here is the captain of the ball club, Steward Butler.
And, Pete, you want to get over here with me and kind of help out here? Here's the guy by the name of Steward Butler, and very glad to meet you, Mr. Butler, and you sure had an excellent football team back here.
We did have, sir. We had a very fine ball club, and it's awful nice to be back to Wabash. All of us coming back here, I think, is quite a tribute to the game of football and to our coach Leewell and to their hometown. We're very glad to be back.
Mr. Butler, I might ask this question. Is this the first time that you gentlemen have had a chance to get together since the old playing days, or a great many years, I would imagine, anyhow?
We had a reunion here 15 years ago. That was our 35th anniversary, and we were all back here except my brother who couldn't make it, and there are 3 members that have gone since that 15 years ago.
Mr. Butler, and we'll call you Stu Butler, where's your hometown?
Winter Park, Florida.
And I know a guy by the name of Harry Gray. He talks quite a bit about you, and I'll bet you know who he is.
If I could say in just a few words, to me, the W in Wabash is Harry Gray.
Well, there you are, Pete. So we found out something about Harry Gray. Well, Stu Butler, according to our list, you actually on that team, along with Larry Marks and Frazier, were selected on the All-State team.
That's right.
It's quite an honor.
Yeah, Larry Marks is here tonight, and Frazier's one of the boys that left us during the last 15 years. But there were a couple of great halfbacks.
Well, that's real great. Well, Lawrence, you got another one coming up here. Lawrence on?
Now we have another boy here, Larry Marks, one of the halfbacks, who went to Indiana University and made a name for himself. Larry Marks.
Well, the first thing, when you stop talking about a half a century is a long, long time. And little did I think back in 1920 that I would be able to beat it to a game at this particular time. And we're seeing a marvelous game, and we're enjoying it to the nth degree. And it's quite an honor to be able to come back.
Now, Larry Marks, we hear a lot about you. Pete, one question I want to ask Larry Marks here is, now, what kind of football field did you guys play on? You didn't play out here.
We played on, well, I tell you, down Old Carroll Street, and usually when it got a little dry down there, we'd tap it and say, well, we'd be better if they paved it. There wasn't much grass there.
Well, Larry, I'll also ask you, what kind of equipment did you have back in those days?
Well, we had a menagerie. The high school gave us our sweaters and our socks, and then we made up our own uniform, and we had everything from a lemon to croquet ball.
Well, there you are, Pete. No equipment really at all in those days.
The school gave us our sweaters and our socks, and we furnished the rest of it.
Now, how about some of the teams you played against? Did they come in with some pretty fancy equipment in those days?
Well, not so fancy, but a lot of them, to me, look old enough to be my father, and it scared me to death. I had a streak down my back about a foot wide and just as yellow could be.
Pete, maybe you'd like to ask Larry a question. I know Larry was quite an athlete in track also.
Yes, I know that he was. Not that I had ever had the opportunity to see Mr. Marks perform, but the Boldies here in this town are quite a legend also, and if you're interested and want to know anything about this great group of men here, all you have to do is talk to one of the Boldy boys. And Byrne, particularly here in the past week, talking about all you fellas coming back and so on, he said this Marks was one whale of a ball player, and we were discussing that here just in the past week. Also, I'd like to ask you, Mr. Marks, you played in the first East-West Shrine game. I understand that the first game that was organized in San Francisco, yes, sir, that you played in the first game.
Yes, in 1925. And we had our 30th reunion. There were, out of the 18 men that were on the team at that time, there were 15 of us that arrived. So we had a lovely time.
That's wonderful. I'm sure you did. Billy, I think we ought to get, we want to get Billy Wilson here, who is Dr. Wilson's favorite boy. I'm just the one that made these other boys famous. That's right. Yeah, that's right. I made them famous. I'm the one that gave them a chance to play. That's right. If I called them missed signals and all that, why, they wouldn't have wanted to a damn. That's right. And I'll bet you got very little credit for it at all.
Well, my father was a great fan of ours, and I always remember going to Kirkland one time and seeing my father down there walking with his cane just as proud as if we were the world champions.
All of the real great, strong sports fans to have you men back. And now we have Mr. Egan here, Bill. I don't think we haven't talked to... Yeah, we haven't got him, so... Dr. Egan, and so we want to hear a few words from you, Doc. Howard Bridges was the right tackle on our team, and he weighed 165 pounds, and he broke his ankle the first game. And I was one of the 2 or 3 other youngsters at Wabash High School who even knew anything about the game. And at 135 pounds, I took his place at right tackle for the remainder of the games.
Well, that's really unusual. And Larry, Lawrence Gaunt here that I'm speaking to now, Larry, with all of the football that you officiated in your time, you didn't see too many 135-pound tackles, I'm sure.
Not too many, no. Then later, after football, I officiated for about 23 years over the state of Indiana and all in the secondary colleges and all the high school teams there. And it just kind of gets in your blood, and you still like the game. We're enjoying ourselves out here this evening.
Well, I'm sure you'll all agree they're in a greater way than you can spend a Friday evening or a Saturday afternoon than watching good high school or college football. There's no doubt about that. So, again, we certainly want to thank you, gentlemen, for taking the time to come up here. Don't we, Bill? I'm kind of taking your spot here.
We're not going to let them get away yet. They can't get away yet. Now, we appreciate all these guys, and I know here we'd like to get Stu Butler back on here again. And Stu, I know that probably you've got some friends around Wabash.
No, I haven't too many friends. I do want to say hello to Harry Gray, and I'd like to also say hello to some old people in town that will remember my father.
All right, and we'd like to get, Billy, Dr. Billy Wilson.
That's right. W-I-L-S-O-N. This is Billy Wilson speaking. That's right.
Quarterback.
Well, I want to tell you folks one thing, that I am delighted to be here for 2 reasons. I'm not going to tell you the second, but the first reason is I'm so delighted with the young people you have here in Wabash. We were pleased this afternoon at the pep session, and particularly pleased to see them tonight. It gives me a lot of confidence. We've got an awful lot of hippies out my way, and I suppose you got some here, but I'm delighted with your young people.
He said Hartford, Connecticut, is that right?
I didn't say Hartford, they had a lot of hippies.
Well, one of your friends said that.
Yeah.
What are your halfbacks?
One of the boys I made famous.
Okay, and Larry Bart.
I understand that Harry Gray is listening in tonight, and it just thrills me to be able to say hello, Harry, and wish you well. And I think maybe I'll see you before I leave town, so keep your eyes and ears open and the door unlocked.
And let's get Dr. John Egan over here.
If Glenn and Marie Bowman are listening, hello, Glenn and Marie. I hope to see you.
And we want to get Harold Anderson. Harold, you're kind of sitting back here letting everybody take the spotlight.
Well, it's been real nice to have these fellows here. We're enjoying this reunion very much. We're enjoying the ball game. And I know Wabash is going to do all right tonight.
Well, Stu, was this guy the biggest guy on the team?
He was the tallest one. We had Hard Showalter was probably Tom Showalter was the heaviest. He's a guard. But none of us were really too big at that time. Really, I think we probably averaged 165 or 70.
I've got to ask Lawrence Gaunt here. Lawrence, was Dr. Billy Wilson a good passer in those days?
Well, he did a pretty good job. We had to depend on him pretty much to carry us along, And, some Leewell Carpenter called me, about 2 months ago, and he said to me, do you know what this year is? And I said, yes, this is 50 years for us. And he says, do you think we can get together? I said, there's just one way, and that's just to try. So we started looking up addresses and everybody all over the United States. And we finally got this gang together tonight, and we had a nice dinner over at the Holiday Inn and all got together, and we took convocation this afternoon, so we've had a big time.
Lawrence Gaunt, thanks a lot here. Stick around now. We've got a little more time. Say, Stu Butler, you played a lot of football teams back in those days. We see you played Elwood there and Elkhart, but in that team where you scored 261 points and didn't let anybody score, who was the real tough team you played that year?
Well, that year, the hardest game we had was against Peru, which the score shows was 17-0. I'd like to say this, too, and a tribute again to this great game of football. We had Dr. Egan, who talked here, had a
coronary a month or so ago, and I think you probably bribed his doctor to make it. My brother who lives in California had a major operation 8 weeks ago, and he's here. So I think there's something to this game of football.
Certainly is.
Billy, any comments on the teams you played, or any other comments?
Yes, but there are very few that I can say, except the people at home are missing a magnificent sight. The band, the girls, the outfit, the night, the course. My gracious, what a beautiful establishment you have here in Wabash, and I'm sure you're all proud of it, and I'm glad to have been here to see it.
And that was Billy Wilson, and we got Larry Marks still standing here, and Larry, we want all you guys are going to be crowning the homecoming queen out here pretty quick, and I know Weldon's up there going to kick that, who that is. But Larry, how about some of the track days? What kind of, now we got all kinds of tracks, you know, rubberized, and I suppose you had excellent track facilities too, along with football back in those days.
As far as I can remember, we had the old cinder track, and if they were rolled down nicely and we had the right spikes and had rained maybe a couple of days before so they packed down, maybe we could get up and go. But I think if you boys talk about track, I think the only reasons I did a little bit in track was the fact that I lived in Union Mills, or Choketown in those days they called it, and I always had to run to school, so that's where I got all my training. So you'll have to blame it on a guy that lived out of town. See, they had to run to get into town, and that helped a little bit. Well, I never had to run to get out of town, see.
Well, I want to get you and Lawrence Gaunt over here again. You said that Peru score, 17-0. Could you possibly think of any players that you played against that possibly really you can remember from maybe, say, Peru or Elwood, Indianapolis? Stu?
Well, the quarterback on that Peru team that we played that year was the last of the great Bergman brothers that played at Notre Dame. This was Joe Bergman. Incidentally, after we left school, Joe Bergman and I ran into each other in Chicago, and we became very, very dear friends, and we're still in contact with each other. And he was the quarterback on that Peru team.
And most of you boys probably went on and played some college ball, didn't you?
Larry and I played at Indiana University. I played 3 years down there. Larry was a year back, and we played 2 years together there. Billy Wilson played at DePaul. Tom Showalter played at Wabash. And was anybody else I missed, Larry, that played college ball? Larry and I were both later captain Indiana teams.
There's some of the list there,
Sir?
There's some of the list. You might check them over there.
No, I mean the ones that played college ball. I don't believe seeing this over. I think that I named. Oh, I beg your pardon. Our dear friend, the two of them that's gone. Frazier played at Kalamazoo, and Liechty, who was our fullback, a great fullback, played at Butler University.
Lawrence Gaunt, a few comments you'd like to make here, I know, about some of these boys that didn't get to come up here tonight.
Well, I was one of the boys that stayed in town after they left. I got into business and still here and still in the contracting business, and wasn't able to get away to school. Wanted to get away to be for a while, but it just didn't work out that way. So I'm still here right now, and I think I'll pass this on back to you.
Well, let's get Larry Marks over here again, and Larry and Stu, and possibly maybe you would like to, I don't want to, well, the lights are all off now, and an old friend of yours is out there putting a crown on the queen. And I thought possibly all of you might like to say something about Mr. Carpenter, who was your coach back there in those days. And so we'll go back out here with you, Larry Marks, about Mr. Carpenter, your coach in those days.
Carpenter came to Wabash my freshman year, so I was under his guidance all the 4 years that I was in high school. And I can say this, that there wasn't a coach in the country that could get 11 boys or a football team or a track team in shape any better than he could do. He was a driver, and he watched us close and made us train, and was practically a second father to us, as far as I'm concerned, to make him any better.
Stu, anything you like about Coach Carpenter?
Well, he was a wonderful gentleman, as you all know, and still is, and he did a very fine job. He was more or less of a big brother to us, and we respected him, and we liked to play football for him.
And Larry? Mark's gone here?
Well, I want to say that Leewell has spent a lot of hard work on getting this party together. He has done a good job, and it took a lot of hours and a lot of finding addresses all over the country to get this game all located.
Well, Larry, I'm sure in conjunction with that all of the time and the effort that he has spent probably hasn't seemed like work to Mr. Carpenter at all, because having you fellas back here, I'm sure that he is just so excited. In fact, I talked to him for a moment just before game time, and he said, Pete, I am so excited and thrilled over this, having these fellas back and the time that we've had since you've been back here in the last day or so. So, yes, very true. If the people didn't hear that, Mr. Marks mentioned that they were very fortunate that we still have Mr. Carpenter with us, which is very true. He's certainly a fine gentleman. I think you fellows would be interested in knowing, and maybe Larry has mentioned this to you watching the ball game, Wabash is the smallest school enrollment-wise in the Central Conference. They're the smallest school, but they are still considered, believe it or not, they're the power in this conference here, along with Huntington and Tipton. And this isn't one of Coach Gunderman's better years, but I'm sure you can see that they hit down there just the same. They hit this isn't as the ball club that he's had in the last couple of years, but they don't back up from anybody, I'll tell you. So you're seeing a pretty good hustling bunch of kids down there.
Pete, we want to, first, before these guys get away, just give a real quick mention, and we'll come back later and mention it. It was Phyllis Kramer, Phil Kramer's daughter, who was just crowned queen out there. And also we have a score here of the Huntington-Alexander game at halftime.
Right, Bill. That's Huntington's out in front 15-3, and that's a real crucial ball game. It's going to settle the championship of the conference this year. And so it's going to be interesting to see what comes out the second half. Also, it's going to be interesting to see what comes out here. I don't think Elwood, being down 3 touchdowns, they're not going to roll over and play dead. And I know they've come behind a couple of times to show some good scoring power here this season. So it's going to be interesting now.
Stu Butler, we want to say you came all the way from
Florida.
I want to say that it's been an honor of me even meeting you. I've heard so much about you, and we sure appreciate you talking to all the people here at Wabash, your former home. Where'd you live in Wabash when you
92 East Hill Street.
92
I'll
East
never
Hill.
forget the number.
92 East Hill.
It's wonderful to be back here,
Was
gentlemen.
Gackenheimer's in business then?
May I tell you real quickly, I have a stepdaughter that she thinks Gackenheimer is the funniest name she ever heard. So she said, Daddy, bring me something from Gackenheimer. I bought a box of candy with a label on it from Gackenheimer's. So Gackenheimer will get a little advertisement in Florida.
Were they there when...
I worked for Emmanuel Gackenheimer when I was soda squirt, my first job.
How about that?
That's been a long time ago.
Okay.
You fellows have been wonderful. It's been nice to be here, and it's our pleasure.
Thank you, Stu Butler. Larry Marks, where did you... well, you said you lived in Choketown.
That's right.
And how about... can you remember the Gackenheimer drugstore or your old hangout?
Oh, absolutely. I'd like to tell a little story about my son when I brought him back here for the first time. My sister took him down to Gackenheimer's, and she let him sit on the counter at the soda fountain, you know. And I'm sorry, but they had to bring the mop in finally.
Well, Larry, we want to say...
That's my son.
We want to say thank you so much for stopping by.
Well, it's been a pleasure.
It's been my pleasure to meet you. I've heard so much about you, and it's
Isn't
been
all-
wonderful.
It isn't always that boys in a half a century can all get together again.
That's right.
It's very rare.
And Lawrence Gaunt, we want to thank you for bringing these guys up here. And I suppose you still live where you did back... where'd you live when you were playing football?
Where did I live? I lived out in the country, pretty close to Larry Marks. We had to walk in together, and
He didn't run.
well, he ran, but I had to get a start ahead of him because he always caught up with me. He was always a pretty fast man. So I lived out in the country. We had to walk in and then walk home at night after football practice. So I got my exercise that way, and which didn't hurt a bit. So this has been really a good day for all of us, and we've all had a good time. It's really nice to get together after 50 years.
Also, one of our sponsors is the First National Bank, and I bet they were probably in operation way back there, too, weren't they, the First National Bank in Wabash? Probably maybe you never got in there during those days.
A little bit before I ever had any money to put in the bank.
Okay, Lawrence Gaunt.
Before you got into the money, wasn't it, huh?
And Larry Marks, Stu Butler, we sure appreciate it. And okay, and Mr. Anderson, we want to thank you for dropping up here. You've been a gentleman, letting these people here from out of town do all the talking, Harold Anderson.
It's been my pleasure. It's wonderful to have them here.
Harold, anybody possibly you know might be listening in, you'd like to say hello to, one of your old friends in Wabash?
No, not that I recall.
Okay, Harold. Okay, and well then, right back over to you. Even a little bit.
Well, I certainly appreciate it, Bill, and I listen to you all the time. When I'm up the lake and away, especially in basketball, I listen, but also in football too.